Hello, ladies and gentlemen. I don't know if this is working or not because I've never used this particular platform, but let's give this a shot. This is going to be the first Mr. Reagan live stream in hopefully a series of live streams. And today I'm going to be talking about the new Durham Report. This is the big breaking news recently. There's been a lot of breaking news recently. It's been pretty insane, actually. I've been really busy, staying up super late at night to the point where I probably look a little bit haggard. I do apologize for that, but man, everything seems to be happening all at once, as is typical. But I've got a friend, and he's a friend of the show. He's been on the show before, and he is what we call. Oh, I got to turn up my audio. Apparently, you guys, let me know if the audio is okay. This always seems to be a problem with my live streams. The audio is never good, so let me know what you think. So I have a friend. He's former FBI. He's currently a political candidate for public office, and I'm going up against Tim Pool. I guess I am. I didn't realize he does a live stream at this time. That's okay. We'll live. We'll compete with Tim Pool today. Because you know what, the Durham Report, this is a very important thing. I did a video about it. About Rachel Maddow's reaction to the Durham Report. And 10 by 10. Okay, thank you very much. And the left obviously is treating this as if it's nothing. Republicans, I think, are taking a more measured approach to this, a genuinely measured approach, because we're a little bit disappointed. Okay, heck, I'm just going to say it. We're a lot disappointed, right? Why are we disappointed? There are no arrests. There haven't been any arrests, right? But there is a little bit of new information. For instance, I did not know that Barack Obama had been briefed about Hillary Clinton's plan to try to frame Donald Trump. I didn't know that. I was unaware of that. So, frame Donald Trump as, having colluded with Russia. That was the plan. Barry Soretto, or whatever his name is, he knew about all of this. Is it Soretto or Sotero? I forget what his last name is. Anyway, point is, there is a little bit of new information here. And also, kind of important, it validated everything that we've been saying for a long time. What's really weird about the validation of conservative ideas and the kind of stuff that we've been talking about for a long time here. People are saying hi everybody. The validation is, it seems to be sticking a little bit with CNN and leftists. Not a lot, not a ton. Somebody like Rachel Maddow still says, okay, there's nothing here. Everything's fine. Nothing to see here. Stop looking behind the curtain, guys. But Jake Tapper actually came out and said this makes the FBI look terrible and exonerates Donald Trump, which I thought that was actually very powerful to hear that from somebody like Jake Tapper. But I've given you my explanation. I mean, look, this is the bottom line. I'm disappointed that there aren't any real arrests. But I think it's difficult. I was listening to Jesse Waters the other day. No, I tried not to listen to the 5, but occasionally I catch something. They fired Tucker Carlson. I thought that was miserable. But Jesse Waters had a really good point. He said, I think at this point, if they were going to make arrests, they'd have to arrest like the entire Democrat Party. And I thought that was pretty funny because that's what it looks like at this point. It's such a vast mesh of people who were involved in this sort of thing. Like, what do you do with that many people that were corrupt on this kind of a level, right? People are always saying, Trump's worse than Nixon. What he did was worse than Watergate, right? That's like the big thing. And the hilarious thing, or the ironic thing, it's not really that funny because it's so messed up, but the rotten thing is that what the FBI did here, conspiring with the Clinton campaign to try to derail a political opponent, derail Republicans, derail Donald Trump, that is worse than Watergate. That's literally worse than Watergate, because what you're looking at is a kind of the same strategy, right? Derail a political opponent when they're trying to run for political office, and and do so in this sort of criminal way, do so in this planned criminal way, but conspiring between the FBI and another political campaign. This was so huge. There were so many players involved at such a high level. I don't know how you could not see it as worse than Watergate, because it's so directly comparable. Unwoke Thoughts sent out a super chat. Thank you, Unwoke Thoughts. And they've written, "Yo, Mr. Reagan, my man. Glad you're finally doing live streams. Love your stuff. One of these days when I have a little bit more clout, we might have to do one together. God bless, man." Okay, Unwoke Thoughts. Yeah, that's cool. I've been thinking about doing a live stream with other people. So this isn't normally going to be something, hopefully, as I get going, this isn't going to be something where it's just me. My hope is that I have other people sort of consistently on the show, but I haven't set that up yet. But that's the idea. Now, for our first episode of this Mr. Reagan live stream, I've decided to bring in somebody who is an expert at all of this. He's somebody that you guys might be a bit afraid of, because we are all kind of terrified of the FBI at this point, right? He's a former FBI agent, so he knows about all this. But back in his day, the FBI was neutral. They were not political. They were not trying to derail political campaigns. So he doesn't like the FBI today in the same way we don't like the FBI today. Maybe he likes them even less. I don't know. And he's got certain plans for how you deal with a corrupt agency. So without further ado, I'm going to bring him on the show. I don't know how he wants me to refer to him. Former FBI. I don't know if I should out him and give you guys his real name. But let's bring him onto the stream. Hello,
hey, Chris.
My secret FBI informant.
I'm not so secret. I'm running for a public office, and
right.
well, thanks for having me on the show. Good to see you again. I've seen.
Why don't you tell
now.
everybody what the public office that you're running for is, just in case they're in the area?
Yeah, absolutely. Oh, by the way, before I get started here, I have a couple of people that are writing. I know this is a new platform for you, and I think some people are having a hard time getting a hold of it. The live stream. So it's Mr. Reagan live stream. And can they get this on YouTube, or is this straight on Facebook?
I think I'm streaming on YouTube. I may also be streaming on Twitter. I'm not 100% sure. I have it set up for that. I haven't set it up for Facebook as far as I know, but definitely Facebook is the place to get it.
Okay. So get it on Facebook. Well, good. And so welcome. I mean, I'm glad to be a part of this platform, and I understand this is the first time you're doing it in this platform, so it's pretty exciting.
Oh, you know what? I've just figured out. So, because I don't really, I'm using a new system, but I think I can show. Yes, I can. Andrea Viola, or Viola. Sorry, not Voila. Andrea Viola writes, "Mr. Reagan, GTSU." I don't know what GTSU means. She writes, "This is the second coup Democrats have committed. The first was Pelosi going to the military, asking them to remove Trump." I remember that. That was a pretty intense thing. That was pretty crazy that she did that. There was like a secret meeting, like how do we get rid of Trump kind of situation. I think it was if he wouldn't leave office if he was not elected, or if he lost the 2020 election. But that was pretty crazy. So why don't you tell us, just give us a brief summary. Again, tell us where you're running and what office you're running for.
Yeah, absolutely. So I live in the suburbs of Northern Virginia, just outside Washington, D.C., if you know the area. I'm running for the Virginia State Senate in the 33rd District, which is Northern Virginia, like the West Springfield, Burke area, all the way down the I-95 corridor down to about Dumfries. And so if you want me to kind of start off with what we're talking about, and by the way, if you want to check out my campaign site and help us out, it is Van Meter for Virginia. That's VANMETER. It's spelled out FOR, Virginia, and then .com. And so back up a little bit. I know, Chris, you and I spoke a little bit back at CPAC. I believe that was 2019, I think. And I was still an FBI agent, retired after 21 years. And you and I spoke there, and just a little bit more about my background. I started out life as a naval officer. I was a helicopter pilot for 8 years. Then I was a Washington, D.C. police officer for a little while, and then was hired by the FBI hired in 98, but started in 99, and then retired a little after 21 years. And
now when we think of military and we think of police, what we want to believe in America is that the people who are going into those fields have a sense of duty and honor
Oh, yeah.
and actually want to do something right for the world. Was that what your thought was when you were in that field? And what do you think that the culture was at the time? Do you think that was a typical view for people in those fields?
Oh, yeah. You're absolutely correct. I mean, if you think about the professions that I've been in, and by the way, after I retired, I went back to school, got another master's degree in counseling, and I work as a drug and alcohol counselor now at a hospital. That's why I'm still in a suit. I just came back from the hospital, and so my whole life has been I've done nothing but serve this nation in one form or another. And I would say that when I went into the FBI and also all the other agencies that I was in, but I know we're going to talk about the FBI here tonight. That when I went into the FBI in 1999, when Louis Freeh was director, so that's pre-Mueller, it was a different organization, and I would say that everybody that I worked with at that time was very similar to me as far as background was concerned. In fact, a lot of military people and police officers, that was seemed to be the flavor of the week at the time, and we were all about service. That's what it was all about, and I'm sure we'll get into the things I noticed that changed over time, and it really does. And myself and the other agents that went into the FBI around my time period will all tell you that the organization today does not resemble in any way, shape, or form the organization that I joined back in 1999. By the way, as you know, Chris, I have my own podcast called The Mike Van Meter Show. And if you go back to the early episodes of the podcast, you will hear me talking about what, in my opinion, from my perch, my view, what happened to the FBI, how it happened. And then I also interview a number of other retired agents that will put their 2 cents in, but we're all pretty much in agreement.
I've actually listened to a few of those episodes. They're excellent. It's kind of a very, very in the weeds, sort of very in-depth kind of like look at what goes on with the FBI. And you tell these little anecdotes about different moments where you realize, like, okay, the FBI is going in a weird direction here.
Yep.
So where it was going, you didn't probably have the term woke at the time.
Never heard. I had never heard that term before.
But that's the way that it was going.
No, I mean that woke was. It wasn't a term. And by the way, I won't even say that it was a conservative organization that became woke and became left wing. You have to understand that in my day in the military and when I went into the FBI, you didn't talk about politics. And I want to tell you some stories about that too as we go along, if we have time for it. I did not know the political affiliation of the vast majority of people, unless I was very, very close to you. I didn't even know what your political affiliation was. And that's the way that it should be. When you're a criminal investigator, like we were, we are apolitical. We do investigations. We go to where the evidence leads us. And I used to, when I taught later, I was taught at the FBI Academy for 7 years. And I used to tell the new agents when I was there that, we go where the evidence takes us. And if the evidence leads to my mother committed the crime, then I will be the first one to arrest my mother. And if you can't do that, then you're in the wrong job, because we are apolitical. We are criminal investigators. We're referees. We call balls and strikes, and we don't tip the scale either way. That has changed. And for those that I remember when myself and my colleagues were talking about what happened to the FBI. And again, that was, I want to say 3 years ago, we did those episodes. I can't remember. It was at least 3 years ago. We did those episodes. And there were a lot of people that were even close to me, even family members, that tried to characterize what we were saying as conspiracy theories, that we were making it up. It wasn't true. They couldn't believe that it was true. They couldn't believe that there was that kind of corruption. And one of the reasons why we talked about what we talked about was to demonstrate to people that, we were there. I mean, you can say whatever you want, okay?
Right,
you can say that we don't know what we're talking about. I was there. You were not. And we called it out then. And when the Durham Report came out this week, it proved every single thing to be true. Every single thing to be true.
Here's what I think's fascinating about that Durham Report. It's kind of boring to a lot of us who knew.
Yeah.
People are saying my volume's low, so I turned it up slightly. Hopefully it's okay. Some people say it's fine. Some people say it's too quiet. So I don't know. I've messed with it a little bit. We'll see how it
Hopefully you
works
can
out.
hear
But
me okay. Yeah.
yeah, well, you're coming in real loud. That's why they were saying my volume's too low. But the weird thing about the Durham Report is that most of us have heard just about everything already. So it's a little bit of a disappointment in that we're not getting a ton of new information. We're not sort of nailing certain people to the wall. I feel like there needs to be people going to prison. I think we all believe that people need to go
I believe
to
that.
prison.
Absolutely. Yep.
But you know, we're getting this sort of like same thing as the Mueller report kind of situation where they're like, yeah, all this. The only, like I said at the top of the show, the only thing that we're getting out of this that seems to be of any significance whatsoever is that Jake Tapper and people at CNN and some people on the left are finally coming around and going, actually, maybe Trump was right. Maybe there was this scheme to go after Donald Trump. Maybe they did spy on his campaign. Yeah, I mean, it's very hard to get any kind of leftist in the media to tell the truth about this, but they seem to maybe be coming around a little bit. So we'll see if this turns into something where this becomes like official history, or if this is always going to be something that's contentious between the left and the right. I made a video about Rachel Maddow where she just essentially dismissed the Durham. I think you've probably seen that video. But
well, I'm going to tell you this, Chris.
Yeah.
I'm going to tell you this, and I know your good friend Sebastian Gorka and I. We had a conversation backstage at CPAC, and let me just formulate my thoughts here, and so I can articulate this in a logical way. What was missing over these past 3 or 4 years was people like myself and others. You're starting to see whistleblowers come out now. But there were many, many people that were not speaking out and not saying things. I may be.
You mean in the FBI?
In the FBI, right. And of course, I couldn't say anything until after I retired. And then, I went and I talked about it on my podcast, but I don't have a vast audience like you do. So not a lot of people were listening to it. I think a lot of people are going to listen to it now. You go back and you listen to like you had said, we got into the weeds and we got into the granular nature of what happened. But it's important for people to understand the granular nature, because any administration that is going to fix that organization will need to understand the granularity that we talked about. And one of the things, and God bless Donald Trump for firing James Comey, and we'll talk about him. God bless him. But what he didn't understand, and it was because he did not have people around him like myself and under the organization, how they could clean it up. They didn't. There's a very unique culture in the FBI, and unless you understand it, and this is a warning to any other administration that's going to come from here on out, until you surround yourself with people that understand that culture. And I do not mean senior executive service people. I mean people that were more at the ground agent level, non-political people. Until you surround yourself with those people, you will never clean that organization out. And I'll be able to explain that to you. But your friend Sebastian Gorka and I had a conversation in the back, and he said something to me that was interesting, and I think it's people don't understand. He says to me, "Are you meaning to tell me that there were people like you, Mike, that were in the organization and they knew there was corruption going on? Why didn't they do anything about it? Why didn't they say anything about it?" And again, he, like others, don't understand how nasty people can be in the organization. And if you rear your head, it is cut off. If you do not believe that people in the FBI will crush you, you've seen it. You've seen the evidence of it. And people know that. And you're talking about people that by the time you become an FBI agent, you're probably in your 30s, right? I was in my early 30s.
You've got a whole career to protect. And
you got a career. You got kids, you got a mortgage, you got all this stuff.
And people are conditioned at that point. People have been
well, it's more than that. It is really just, you're thinking, okay, you're mid-career, you've got to make it to your retirement, and you can stand up. People can say they're going to stand on their principles all they want, but unless you've been in their shoes and you know that you will be crushed, you know it, you keep your mouth closed, because there's a long history in the FBI of that happening. And I saw it over and over and over again. And I was explaining that to Sebastian, and I think he was a bit shocked when I said that to him. But I said, but until it is easy to stand on the outside and look in and say, this is what they should do. That's what they should do. The changes aren't going to come from the agents and the analysts that are inside. It has to be a political will.
Also, I would say that like sometimes when you're in an organization and you feel like there's something a bit wrong here, like this is true in Hollywood, I would say, big time, where people are maybe a bit conservative or they see that the left is doing something a bit wrong in Hollywood, but they're not sure what the extent of it is. They're not sure how evil is this, how bad is this, like how vicious is this for society. If I stand up and get my head cut off, is it worth it? Is this little thing that I've seen that I want to take out and I want to expose and all that kind of stuff, is it worth it for me to destroy my career for this small thing? So if you have people who don't really have the big picture, they just have a little bit of corruption here or there, something bad, it's not worth it to them in their mind.
Right.
When we say people knew things, we don't necessarily mean they knew everything. James Kingsley, qpatriot.org, sent me $10. Thank you, James Kingsley. That's very good of you.
Sent you $10.
Yeah. People send me money sometimes. This is how live streams work.
Chris, people are sending you money right now.
Yeah, I know. Okay. I don't. I have no. I'm not worth it, guys. Don't even.
Hey, but no, you raise a good point, and you have to remember too that just let this play out in real life. I know you're a married guy. I'm a married guy, and you come home and you're telling your wife who left her career, right? She left her career. You got 2 kids. You got a mortgage and all that, and you say, honey. Listen, there's some corruption in the FBI, and on principle, I'm going to stand up, and we're going and I'm going to fix this, and I'm going to stand up to principle. And your wife looks at you and says, "That's not happening."
Yeah, exactly.
You see those 2 kids, you see this house. I left my career to follow you, and by the way, that person right there. Is a political appointee, because a lot of people don't realize that the FBI director is a political appointee. He's not an agent. James Comey was not an FBI agent, and they will be gone in 3 or 4 years. So you just sit tight, cowboy, and you work it out until retirement. And those are the reality. Those are the realities behind it. Okay. But what it comes down to is those that are now not in the organization. And I cannot say this enough, Chris. The next administration needs to be surrounded by people that have a vested interest in the organization. Because for those that are watching your show right now,
not just a vested interest, but a great knowledge of the people in it and how to suss out who is deep state and who's like a legitimate
absolutely
person.
Because you know who the most offended people are about what's happened to the FBI. Do you know who, Chris? Do you know who the people that are the most upset about this?
Let me guess. Former FBI
agents. That's my generation of FBI agents. Because let me tell you something, Chris. I'm running for the Virginia State Senate right now, and when I became an FBI agent, when I became an agent, it was the biggest honor of my life. And anywhere I went, if I told someone I was an FBI agent, it was like you were a celebrity. It was like, whoa, we've never, it was people were impressed. Now,
well, in the 80s in particular, there was a lot of movies. In the 90s, there was a lot of movies like TV shows. The FBI is cool, guys. If you're an FBI agent, you're a cool dude.
Now, today, I'm running for office, and I have people in my political world right now that are telling me, hey, Mike, when you go out on the campaign trail, don't talk about it. You, having been an FBI agent, is hurting you as a candidate. And when I became an agent, the thought that telling people I was an agent would hurt me was a foreign. I had never imagined that. But that is the legacy of James Comey. That is the legacy of Robert Mueller. That's the.
Well, what is
we're upset about it.
Let me just say, I got a friend named Chris Schlufer on the like watching. He's a buddy of my little brother out in Salem, Oregon, so it's kind of fun to see him on there. He says, Chris Coles, that's me, Chris Coles is the deep state of the deep state. He's messing around. But hey, why don't you just give us your quick first impression, just your overview of what your thoughts are on the Durham Report specifically. Does this change anything? Is this profound? Like I said, we learned a little bit about Obama finding out about this early on, so that's kind of a little bit of new information. I didn't feel like it was a huge bombshell. It does validate a lot of what we were saying. Yeah. What's your take?
Okay, so my take on it is like you. It confirmed. I didn't actually need the Durham report to come to those conclusions. I knew that a long time
Oh,
ago.
well, we all
Yeah,
suspected that Obama had been briefed and he knew all that stuff.
yeah,
Anyway, this
yeah.
is kind of confirmation of like
And Biden, by
not
the way,
just what
too.
we knew, but what we suspected as well.
Yeah, I'll tell you what. It is not going to do anything right now because of the way that the Congress is set up right now with the Democrats in control of one house and the Republicans. Anything that the Republicans want to do. Let's say they impeached Biden today. The Senate's going to shut it down. So, but what it will do is for the next administration, whoever that may be, and let's just stick with Trump, because I think this is the biggest thing that comes out of this report. If you're Donald Trump and you're part of Trump's team, you now have a baseball bat to work with. Okay. You have a baseball bat to work with. Now, I say that that's also true for, let's say it's DeSantis, and we'll see what happens. Whoever the Republican nominee is, it's going to be a baseball bat for them to wield. It will also be a tremendous instrument for an administration that is serious about making changes over in the DOJ, over at the CIA, and particularly in the FBI. But by the way, it wasn't just the FBI that was involved, and we found that out in the report too.
How
So
critical is it that we have the House and Senate as well, though, or is it
it's
just that
critical.
we just
It's
okay?
without in this next election, without all three branches, the House and the Senate and the presidency, nothing is going to happen. And by the way,
Well, that's not all three branches, but that's two full branches.
well, it's well, bodies,
right.
the
You
three
need
bodies.
all three of those.
Because if
yeah.
you move in the House and the Senate rejects it, or vice versa, or if the president vetoes anything the other two do, then you're kind of screwed and you're not going to get anything done. But that's assuming that you get an administration that does what I just said, and that is A, is serious about making changes, and B, without the people around you that can walk in and say, Mr. President, this is where your problem is.
Yeah.
That person is your problem. This system, because if you go back and you listen to the early podcasts that I did, it starts with the promotion system.
You were saying this years ago, and I will say, and I want to thank Pat Cummings for the $10. Thank you, Pat Cummings. You were saying this years ago, and I remember this was kind of the first time I thought about who could actually point to those people.
Right.
Because you could do it. You were like, I'm the kind of person that can do it. Doesn't have to be me, but somebody like me who's former FBI, who worked in that building, who knows all the people there, and they can tell you. And I loved that. I really thought that was smart, because I don't know, you get this sense of hopelessness sometimes. It's like, are they all corrupt? Like, who can point fingers? Who can guide somebody like Donald Trump? You could do it. Former FBI who are honest and who are patriotic. And, they say you can't, like, it's illegal or whatever to hire just Republicans or to ask somebody what their political affiliation is and hire on that basis. I don't know. Maybe we should change that law. I think maybe you should be able to.
Well, hold on now. There's all kinds of positions that are political appointees. And to have special assistants, that's not illegal at all. But James Comey was not hired because of his law enforcement experience. He was hired because he was a political person. And that's true of all the heads of all the agencies down the street here. All of them.
Well, yeah, Democrats don't actually play by the rules, but Republicans do. And that puts us at a disadvantage, or at least maybe not Republicans, but conservatives who are true patriots as opposed to deep state operators.
Right. But Chris, let me tell you something. It needs to change, because this is what the Durham report did. And I'm very disappointed that there were no indictments, because there absolutely should be. And I could go on for hours explaining how and why that is. But here's what it did demonstrate. And all of your listeners that are listening to this podcast or this stream right now, you need to understand what I'm about to say. What was clear is that there was no evidence of any crime being committed. Zero evidence of a crime being committed. But yet you had years of FBI agents and an FBI director and an attorney general that were going into federal court swearing to affidavits stating that there were. And they knew that there was no crime, and they knew what they were saying was not true. And people's lives were destroyed as a result. That cannot, Chris, listen to me, that cannot be allowed to go on.
Actually, at the top of the show, I was I forgot to say this. I was going to kind of ridicule the FBI because their response to this whole thing, to the Durham Report, the response to the Durham Report, which basically validates everything we've said, or we've been saying for a couple years now, is oops, we made a boo-boo. We won't do it again. Oopsie daisy. It wasn't actually a mistake, but they pretend that it was a. Yeah, it was intentional. They pretend that it was a mistake. Oh, if we'd only had these safeguards in place, that this wouldn't have happened. We put those safeguards in place. What safeguards are you talking about? What the hell are you talking about? It's such a smokescreen, right? It's such a what do they call it? Gaslighting the American public. And the funny thing, so conservatives, none of us believe that, of course. We're just all like rolling our eyes at it. But leftists will believe it. The leftist mainstream media will go, well, that was during the Comey years. That's not really, there's nobody in there like that anymore. Well, they're still going after the January 6th protesters. And I feel like, okay, so let's pretend that, let's say, okay, 2020 was a perfect election. There was no fraud. What are you guys talking about? The FBI, we say that there's people who are biased in the FBI against conservatives, but that's necessary because you can't have January 6th protesters just walking through the halls of the Capitol casually protesting, an election. We need them to fall in line and everybody to obey, right? That seems to be the way the left is thinking. Like, if they're not voting like us, then we have every right to be authoritarian against them. It's the most sort of like bizarre thing I've ever seen the American people just accept. What's weird is, in the 60s, the left was the party of, oh, we need to be able to fight the man and, go against the system and like stand up against, tyrannical governments and stuff like that. And the left has all these hippies from the 60s have now gone like, why aren't you people falling in line and, goose stepping with the rest of us? Why aren't you doing exactly as you're told? Become an automaton NPC like the rest of us. It's bizarre how that's happened. And I feel like this happens with conservatives all the time where we're say like, we were the abolitionists back in the day, right? Republicans were the abolitionists back in the day. And we said, this is wrong. It's wrong to have slaves. It's wrong to be, racist. It's wrong to have all these things. And then we get to a point where we fix that problem. And then the left goes, actually, it's not just wrong, it's really wrong. And we're now going to stand up for this value. We're like, we just fixed that though. And they're like, nope. Now they go like way overboard to the point where they get corrupted. And this is kind of what it's like. I feel like in the 80s, the Republicans were the party of law and order and playing by the rules. And now the left is like, oh, you've got to play by the rules, and we're going to set the rules, and you have to follow it exactly by the law, and if exactly by the letter, and if you don't, we're going to throw the book at you. And they've become this sort of like law and order party, but only for political crimes, and only for, only if you disagree with them, really. But they've become like super hardcore. Like they're trying to put Trump in prison. I mean, it's the left goes just crazy with everything. They're just con artists. Everybody on the left in Washington, I feel like, is a con artist, and they're all just trying to get rich and stay in power. That's how it seems to me.
Well, here's my question: where are the Republicans in this?
Yeah.
Why?
I mean, that's a great question. The elected Republicans. Yeah, sure.
Well, seriously, I'm running for a state office. And I'm talking to you about this right now. This isn't even a state issue, and I'm talking about it, and I'm upset about it. I mean, this is something that Republicans should be shouting about every single day from the rooftops.
Well, you hear a few Republicans, elected officials, talking about it, but you don't see any action.
Yeah,
exactly. Jim Jordan, Marjorie Taylor Greene, and whatnot. But you don't see a ton of action. You don't see. Thank you, Kenny Sherrill, for the $20. Thank you, Kenny. But I don't see a ton of actual action. And I think people have been very, very disappointed in the Durham Report because we just didn't see accountability. You see exposure.
Right.
And a lot of people are saying, well, exposure is the first step. Right, but we don't want to be on step one after a years-long investigation and millions of dollars spent. We want to see heads roll, figuratively. Don't demonetize me for advocating murder,
No. Well, it should shock anyone, because I want to remind people of some of the things that happened during that is just unbelievable. For example, I actually met this young man back in 2019, a man named Carter Page. Do you remember his name? Carter Page. Okay. For those that don't remember, Carter Page was a businessman, Naval Academy graduate, as a matter of fact. So he was a naval officer and in the energy business. And so he was traveling to, as part of his business, traveling to Russia, which is not illegal to do, doing business, but he was also a volunteer in the Trump campaign. Now, there's no evidence that he and Donald Trump have ever met one another, but he was working on the campaign. So he goes back and forth. And at some point, the FBI says this guy, to help support this idea that Trump is colluding with the Russians, he's under surveillance, and he was up on a FISA warrant, and for the people that don't understand what that is, that means that they're up on any of electronics, they're doing physical surveillance, they're monitoring everything with this guy. It's a big authority, and you go into a secret court. It's called a FISA court, and they renewed it 4 times. So 4 times this agents went in. Testify.
Because it's illegal to spy on Americans. But you
right.
can
you can get approval for
this.
But you have to go in and convince a judge that you have.
But I think they've never denied anything, right? Isn't that right?
Huh?
Like the FISA court hadn't ever really denied the FBI any.
Like 0.1% of But it's really easy. It's not like a criminal standard, and I'm going to address that here in a second too. But anyway, they go in 4 times. Now, what had happened was at some point Carter Page realizes he's being investigated. And he approaches the FBI and says, "Hey, look, here's what you need to understand. I'm working for the agency. Okay. I'm an informant for the agency. You need to talk to them. You have me." And so, long story short, there's an FBI attorney named Kleinsmith. You can look this up. It's out online. And Kleinsmith reaches out to the CIA, and the CIA sends an email confirming that Carter Page is in fact a source for them. What Kleinsmith did, knowing that this is what's known as exculpatory information, and you're obligated, you're sworn to, anytime there's exculpatory information, meaning you have evidence that the person you're looking at actually did not commit the crime that you're investigating them for, you're under absolute oath obligation to immediately go back to the court that issued the FISA and let them know that you have exculpatory information. But what Kleinsmith did was the exact opposite. He actually changed the email to say that Carter Page was not a source when the email said that he was a source, and then went in, used that information, and got another FISA warrant. That's
the
what we're talking
problem with
about.
the Kleinsmith situation was that, and I want to thank Eric Wade. He says, my first vote was for Ronald Reagan. Please consider using the super chat to enjoy his favorite cocktail, Orange Blossom Special Made with vodka. Love your work, Chris. Well, thank you, Eric Wade. I didn't know that. I don't really drink, but next time I have a drink, I'm going to order that, actually. That's pretty cool. A lot of people think Kevin Kleinsmith, and me included, and this is mostly speculation, but, I mean, come on, it's pretty obviously true, that, Kevin Kleinsmith did not act independently, right? He didn't go ahead and doctor that document. The way Rachel Maddow posed it is like he made a mistake on a form. He made a mistake. No, he did not make a mistake. First of all, he got a slap on the wrist. He got like community service, which I don't think he's probably even actually doing. There was no real consequence for what he did, but he was a kind of what would you call it? Like a scapegoat. He was a scapegoat, right? They used this guy. They said, "Hey, we're going to help you out. You're just going to have to take the fall. You're going to be our fall guy. You're going to be our scapegoat. We're going to use you so that the rest of us can get away with it." And he went along with that, and that's the only person who's really been targeted as having done any corrupt. We know that he was told to do this. So who told him to do it?
Rachel Maddow. And by the way, Rachel Maddow, you can invite me on if she still has a show, you can invite me on your show, and I can explain to you how this stuff works. That was not a mistake. There's so much oversight over these things. It was not a mistake. And these warrants, when they do, before these warrants go over in writing, there's the whole tier of people that review these forms and check and double check, and there's source reviewers and all kinds of things. So Rachel Maddow, if you'd like to have me on your show, have me on your show, and I'll explain to you the process.
Yeah, I don't.
Okay,
that's
Please
never
do.
going to happen.
Right.
Right. So, okay. So your position is we need to get this cancer out. A lot of people are saying, and I've asked you this before, but we'll go over it again. We should just dismantle the FBI. Just get rid of it. Maybe start up a new organization that essentially does the same thing. Because the FBI is supposed to stop federal crimes. That's an important job that the FBI is supposed to do. But a lot of the FBI is caught up in this political crap, and they're not doing it. Joshua Napoli gave me $2. He says DC juries aren't going to do what's sane or right, and that's a very good point.
That's true.
And people
I
have
agree.
pointed this out, that maybe the reason that Durham hasn't charged anyone is he knows that they'll get off scot-free. There's been a couple of people who were charged and they did get off, and it's like, well, there's a lot of double entendres.
Durham's not in D.C. though. I believe he's in Connecticut.
Okay. But I think
Yeah.
the charges that he would level would be, we tried in D.C., probably many of them. You got to avoid terms when we're talking here like got off, fingered. There's a lot of double entendres in this whole situation that I've been desperately trying not to use, but unfortunately, you're supposed to laugh at that. I feel like Jeb Bush. Please clap. But anyway, I was trying to make a joke there.
Hey, so addressing this issue of disbanding the FBI, and I want to explain because many people in the audience may not understand this. Many people in the administration may not understand this, and that's why we need people that are there that understand it. The FBI is a unique organization in that, you think of us as being federal police, and we are, but hold on, there's a bit more to that. When you're a police officer, you're investigating crimes. When you're an FBI agent, the FBI actually investigates well over 700 different violations. And there's there's actually three, but two big branches. And that's the criminal branch, which is broken up into counterterrorism, and then true criminal, and then counterintelligence. Okay, now why is that an important distinction? Because they're very different things. The FBI investigates spies within the United States. The CIA investigates spies overseas. It's a very, very different thing. Now, typically in the FBI, the counterintelligence world and the criminal world don't touch because there's very different standards. When you're working criminal cases, you're like a police officer. Everything that you do is based on the Constitution, First Amendment, Second Amendment, Fourth Amendment rights of search and seizure, all that kind of stuff. All those rules applied when you're a criminal agent. And what that means, now none of that applies when you're a counterintelligence agent. So as a criminal agent, the way this works is there's a crime, there's an allegation of a crime. And then what you do is you investigate the allegation of the crime, and you develop evidence to charge that person for committing that crime, if you follow me. In the counterintelligence
they don't need a crime. They just have to suspect you.
Well, here's the difference. On the counterintelligence side, your intent is not to arrest people. And by the way, most of the people you're looking at are not U.S. citizens anyway, so the Constitution doesn't apply to them.
Right.
So what happens
intelligence
is
gathering.
You're gathering intelligence, and what you do is you're looking at spies. You're gathering intel for intel purposes, and the way that they operate is very different. It will be that guy right there, Chris Coles.
Yeah.
Is the kind of guy that would do that. So let's follow Chris around. Well, did Chris do anything? No, but Chris looks look at him. He's in a black leather jacket. A guy like him would do. That's what they do. Now, here's what happened in this case.
I've definitely been colluding with Russians. But real quick, do you think that this is something where you could create two organizations? Because why is this because these are such different okay, so you agree with that.
Yeah, because what happened was what happened in this case though was all the agents, Peter Strzok, Andy McCabe, all these guys, they were counterintelligence agents. But what they did was they took that and brought it into the criminal realm. And so they were saying things like, well, Carter Page is a businessman and he's going to Russia. He's volunteering on the Trump campaign. So a guy like that, you see, and they started making these suppositions as opposed to develop. And when the evidence didn't match what they were supposing, then they tried to make the evidence match. That is very dangerous. And so we need to move that out and have an FBI that investigates federal crimes and then an organization, whether you just move everybody out and put them into an existing organization or create another organization.
So that was your
But they need to
proposal,
set-
and I was and I jumped the gun there on that.
Oh, I'm sorry.
No. I'm saying I did.
Yeah.
I stepped on your conclusion there, kind of.
But a guy like Peter Strzok never set foot in a criminal courtroom. He wouldn't know if he was working with me on a squad. He wouldn't know how to put a criminal case together.
Because what's
by
happening
the way,
is-
why was he
yeah.
running I never saw until this happened. And I don't know an agent. Bring an agent on that will tell you that a deputy assistant director, which is what he was working a case. The people that work cases are FBI agents in the field, right? In the field. And when I was working cases, I dealt with my next level supervisor. Rarely, if ever, did I go one.
So that's
level
kind of a
above
red
that.
flag already that he was even
Yeah.
involved. So
Right.
okay, so I feel like what you're saying is this conflation of this espionage or counter-espionage aspect of the FBI and the criminal investigation aspect of the FBI. When you conflate those two, I think what you're saying is you can end up with something very similar to the KGB. And that's kind of what we got here, where they're abusing their power because they've got too much. And here's another question for you. What do you think of all this? Whenever they, because they're supposed to be held accountable with I think the House of Representatives, right? The House does this oversight of the FBI. But whenever they're asked anything, literally anything, they're just like, we can't comment on ongoing investigations. What do you think of this ongoing investigations excuse for not ever being held accountable for anything, especially January 6th? What was funny to me was they exposed themselves accidentally, right? So they said, did you have agents out there on January 6th agitating the crowd? And they said, we can't comment on ongoing investigations or whatever it was, So, or we can't reveal sources and methods or something. Well, if you didn't have anybody there, you wouldn't be revealing any sources and methods, would you? So you've got, it's actually two things, right? So it's, we can't comment on ongoing investigations and we can't reveal sources and methods. And I feel like both of these things are abused massively.
Yep.
How can you not tell the people that are supposed to hold you accountable legally, the House of Representatives, these people, that's their whole job, right? I mean, they've got a lot of jobs, the House of Representatives, but a massive part of their job is holding these people accountable, and they can just hide behind this ongoing investigation thing. They can hide behind sources and methods constantly. What's your take on all that?
Here's my take on it. If I were in Congress, this is how the conversation would go. Number one, we're going to go into a closed door session right now.
Yeah.
And we're going to do it. And I'm going to explain to Mr. Wray, the FBI director, I'm going to educate you on something. Congress created the FBI, not the other way around.
Yeah.
Congress created the FBI. And here's the thing. We want answers to this. You've had that laptop, Hunter Biden's laptop, for 4 years, and this has had a significant impact on the United States. And apparently you don't understand that you answer to us the other way around, and your budget comes from us. So until you answer our questions, which is our lawful duty, and we created uncreated, but until you speak up, you can do it behind closed doors. We can do it, but you're going to answer and stop with this. We can't comment on ongoing investigations. You had no problem commenting on the Trump investigation for 4 years. You pick and choose which investigations you want to comment on. If it's a classified thing, we have a skiff over here we can go into and talk to it about it. But apparently you don't understand that you work for us. And my sole mission,
do you think that's
Mr. Ray,
enough? Do you think that's enough? Is it possible? I don't know what how far the Congress is, because they can't arrest people. Congress doesn't have the authority to arrest anyone, right? That's the Department of Justice.
Chris. They have the budget authority. They can cut the budget.
But I don't know if that's enough. I think you need to. Do you need the DOJ? Who would arrest Christopher Wray?
No, I'm not talking
because
about arresting him.
I am.
Talking about.
I am.
It's not going to happen. But you can remove him.
It's not going to happen.
You can
well,
remove
how do we make that happen?
I'll tell you how it happens. You get people in office that have the will to do it, and then you hold them accountable for it. This election, this last election should have been a blowout, and it wasn't. And I think it's because of the apathy. Chris, I'm running in Northern Virginia, which is deep blue. The people I'm running against are awful, unless you want to be a communist. But I will probably not win this election because Republicans will not get out and vote and put the people in that are going to stop this nonsense. You get the government that you vote in, and B, you have to hold those people accountable. And God bless Jim Jordan. God bless, all of the people that are fighting the way that they're fighting. And Kevin McCarthy taking these idiots off of the Intel committees and all these other committees. At least they're showing that backbone. But we have to remove these people. And I would tell Chris Wray that my sole mission in life would be to have him removed as director of the FBI. That would be my sole mission.
And then that can happen. I mean, that's actually a much bigger threat, I would say, than the money thing. But go back to the money thing. So I kind of cut you off there. You're saying that if you threaten the FBI with defunding them, that will actually be a motivator. I'm not quite as convinced, but walk me through how
you actually have to do it. You actually have to do it. You can't just threaten it. You have to do it.
But okay, could you take money out of so this is the problem with having it, the criminal part of the FBI and the counterespionage part of the FBI. Like when you have these two entities, you still want the going after criminals part, like the policeman part, But
are they doing
that? You
that?
Still want that funded.
Chris, are they doing? Hold on. I'm going to stop you there for a second. Are they doing that?
They're going after all kinds of January 6th criminals.
I heard the other day that the president even said that even today, the number one threat is white supremacy.
Yeah. That was like a commencement address or something like that.
And that's not the first time he has said that. That is not the first time he has said that. The largest investigation in FBI history was January 6th. Is that justified? We have terrorists coming across the border. We have fentanyl coming across the border. We have gang members coming across the border. We have all these people coming across the border. What is the FBI doing right now? They're going after January, and I'm punish the people that broke, hurt people and do all that. Is it all of them? And did it justify the number of agents and the amount of money spent on that? Chris, I can tell you right now, and I want you to mark my words. We have Chinese spies that have been infiltrating this nation for quite a while, and they're pouring over this border. And we've got their military. We are about to get our asses handed to us if we don't wake up. And the FBI is designed, and that is the purpose, is to prevent that. Remember, I told you, spies within the U.S. borders, that is the realm of the FBI, and that's what I am not worried. You are not worried about some Yahoo with a Viking hat on his head, who, by the way, was let into the Capitol. He's not my threat, but the Chinese Navy and the Chinese Army is. Okay?
What's interesting is Trump pointed that out during his campaign. Actually, in 2016, he said, "Look, China's the biggest threat. Nobody's paying attention to it." I don't think we remember back then that people really weren't paying attention to China. And since Trump was elected, we've had all this stuff exposed. I mean, the Chinese had, I think, the biggest digital attack, internet attack on the FBI, and I think they got everybody's names. From what I understand, people had medical records and stuff that was embarrassing about them, and any kind of criminal conviction in their personnel files. And all the personnel files of the entire federal government were stolen by the Chinese. So now if anybody wants to blackmail anybody from China, it seems like they can now. It seems like tons of people.
Let me tell you what they're also doing, Chris. Because the minute that I announced I was running for the Virginia State Senate, the number of Chinese, particularly females, actually it's all females, targeting me, trying to make connections with me since the day I announced. I never had them before, but after I announced, and then shortly after I noticed that, there were articles coming about how the Chinese are targeting every level, not just federal officials, but state and local officials as well, because they want to influence every level of government. And here in Virginia, Governor Youngkin actually just made it illegal for Chinese companies to buy Virginia property because of all the military bases that we have here. They are trying to control every level of government. And I'm telling you, they've been targeting me. Okay, we better wake the hell up.
What you're talking about very specifically is, I believe, is called a honey trap, right?
It is. Yep. Yep.
And so you've been targeted. You believe you've been targeted with honey trap. I thought about this the other day.
Yeah,
the other day, I was thinking when I blew up, my channel blew up early on. I was like, I wonder if they ever sent anybody to try to get me, like a honey trap, right? But I have like very specific standards. Like I'm not gonna like just like flirt with some random chick. I mean, I'm kind of a flirtatious person by nature, but not in any serious way. I'm not gonna entertain any ideas about some like random chick that's trying to talk to me. So I don't think
if you're a public
official,
if you're a public official, you shouldn't be responding to anything, Mr. Swalwell.
Right,
but he's not the only one.
Well, he did that before he was, I think, a public official.
He was a local official, is what I'm getting
he was
at.
a local official.
He was
now, do you think people are responding to online solicitation?
Absolutely, they are.
Okay.
Have you met? Hey, Chris, let me ask you a question.
Because that seems less effective than
some of the
than
people
an
running
in-person.
for office? Have you met? Have you go take a look at some of the people that are running for office? Look at the people that I'm opposing in my race. These are people that would do anything to get into office.
Yeah.
The only thing that surprises me is it's not more that have been targeted. And what I'm saying.
Well, it probably is. We probably just haven't heard about it.
Probably.
Like not every crime gets exposed.
Right. But that's where the threat is, and that's what we need the FBI to do. And if I had Christopher Wray sitting in front of me, and Christopher Wray, if you're listening, I'm telling you right now, you need to focus on what's the old saying? Make the main thing the main thing. And the main thing is we got Chinese intel officers coming across our border, targeting our officials. We have fentanyl, which, Chris, I work in a detox unit. I watch people die from fentanyl every day. That is not by accident. And we are losing a generation of people. As bad as you think that that fentanyl is, it is much worse than you think. And that is the Chinese doing. You mark my words for it. That's what.
Oh no, the Chinese come after us every 1,000 different ways, and it's like what's weird about it though is that the Biden administration, the FBI, they talk about it like it's a threat, but they don't seem to actually do anything about it. They seem to be focusing on the white supremacy problem. It's what's really weird.
Can you name, Chris? Let me ask you.
Yeah.
Can you name the last white supremacy incident?
I know. Well, what's funny? The left always says, "What about Timothy McVeigh, guys?" They got to go back to like 1994 to get. I don't remember when Timothy McVeigh was. I think it was 94.
95. They got to go back to 95.
Yeah. They got to go back to the 90s.
And if you ask people that, but the president says it's our number one threat, but yet nobody can tell me when the last incident was.
It's a talking point. It's subterfuge. I don't know. It's a distraction, sleight of hand. I'm not really sure. I mean, I understand that there's a political motivation to it, but you'd think that if you focused on real problems, that people would respect you more. I think about this with the homeless problem in L.A. I had this discussion with my brother the other day because I think there's so much corruption in politics, especially on the Democrat side, that politicians will allow a problem to persist, like the homeless problem, so that they can say, oh, we need to tackle this homeless problem. Let's invest a bunch of tax money into it. They put it into some kind of nonprofit group or a government-funded organization, or they put it into businesses or whatever, but it's kind of a scam, right? So they're using taxpayer money to pay off people that they like, or maybe it gets kicked back to them. But in any case, the more government programs that you have, the more social issues that you're paying for, the more opportunity you have for fraud and to steal tax money and to pay off the people that are paying off your campaign. So I think that some of it comes from that, but that's my only theory. I don't really understand why Democrats seem to like problems, like homelessness. They seem to not care about the Chinese problem. They seem to not care about fentanyl. I don't really understand how you're a politician. You're supposed to improve the quality of life of Americans. You don't care about all those things. How are Americans so blind they keep voting for these Democrats? All right, we're going to wrap up here because we're just a little bit past the hour. But why don't you give me another breakdown real quick, what the problem is, if the Durham Report exposed anything, and how we fix it. Real quick summary.
Okay, so the summary on this is it confirms everything that we said all along, that the entire Russia collusion scandal was just that. It didn't make any sense if you looked at the campaign to begin. I mean, you don't even have to get into the case itself. You just listen to the rhetoric of Donald Trump and listen to the rhetoric of Hillary Clinton, and you go, why? If I were on the command staff of with Putin, why would I want Donald Trump as president? It never made any sense to me. So it proved that. But furthermore, what it proved is that we had leaders of all of our intel agencies, all of them. Remember the letter of like 50 plus former Intel chiefs that signed off on this. They were all willing to do that for political purposes. And that's a key takeaway. And that was done with the hierarchies of all of these agencies, because they were put into place. The people we never did talk about Mueller and how during the 12 years of Mueller in the FBI, he was able to groom his people to come in that were all like-minded. And you had all these yes men that were right under that, second tier and tertiary tiers that were able to support that. And it took about the 12 years to do that. Maybe we'll do that on another episode at some point. But we explain all of this in my podcast, the Mike Van Meter Show, and you go back and listen to it. But that needs to be eradicated. And you need to have people that are in whatever the next whatever administration wants to do something. And by the way, who knows? It could be a Democrat administration. I doubt it. But whoever wants to do it, you need to have people in your organization that understand that organization and can point to where the problems are. And Congress, and if you're a congressman or woman and you're listening to what I'm telling you right now, you need to stand up to the FBI director. And I'm telling you, I would bring that man Ray in front of me and say, you fix this or we're not funding you. And by the way, my sole mission in life is to have you removed as director.
Yeah, I love it. Well, I hope, we just got to vote Republican. I don't know if that's always the perfect answer, because, not every Republican is a Jim Jordan. Not every Republican is a Matt Gaetz. We don't.
Well, your worst Republican is probably better than your best Democrat.
Exactly. That. Yeah. I mean, yeah, you're 100% right. There is something known as the deep state. There is, some people call it the uniparty. People who are just acting in their best interest, not the best interest of the American people. This is obviously something we want to expose and talk about on this show, and throughout, conservative social media, I guess. I have a new video out. I want everybody to watch it. I'm really proud of it. Well, I'm not proud of it, but whatever. It is what it is. I reported on something that I think is quite cool. Elon Musk, I don't know if you saw this. Elon Musk came out and was accused. He basically said that George Soros is evil. He's like, George Soros wants to destroy the fabric of civilization, I think he said. And he said George Soros is hates humanity, which is pretty intense. And then he was asked about this by a lefty reporter who was pretending to be nice to him. He's like, I don't think that you're an anti-Semite, but I'm curious why you would say something like this, right? And he says, well, that's what I think. And he's like, yeah, but people disagree with you. Aren't you going to ruin your bottom line? And he's like, look, I need to be able to say what I believe is true. And he goes, if that loses me money, then so be it. And I was just like, boom. Elon Musk just keeps getting better and better. I think he's getting more and more red-pilled. So anyway, Michael, you need to watch my video. Everybody in the chat needs to watch the video. Southern Comfort jumped in. She said, glad I caught it alive. How often do you have them? My opinion is just use common sense. Well, that is the American way, really. That's the Republican way. Or the conservative way, I should say. That's the Oregon way. That's where I'm from. Now, Michael Van Meter, why don't you tell everybody real quick, once again, where you're running, what your website is, how they can donate to you, and everything like that, trying to make Virginia great again.
Yeah, that's right. The great Commonwealth of Virginia, and it is a great Commonwealth. You can see it right here, right?
Beautiful.
That's my window. No, that's my wall. But it does look like that in the fall. Mike Van Meter, and that's VanMeter. And my campaign website is Van Meter for Virginia. That's spelled out FOR.com, VanMeter4Virginia.com. And also check out my podcast, the Mike Van Meter Show. And you've been on that show, Chris, I think a couple of times on there. So
Well,
Please
that's
reach
okay.
out and help us. Help us any way you can, because if you don't know Northern Virginia politics, it's probably as bad as you are out there in LA. It is very, very deep
Right.
blue. So a guy like me, it is very difficult. But with your help, we can do it, and we need a lot of your help. So if you listen to this and you agree with what I had to say tonight, please help me out if you can. VanMeterforVirginia.com.
All right. All right. Well, yeah, we're praying for you, Michael. And let me say to answer Southern Comfort's question, I am hoping to make this a weekly broadcast. I'm going to try to do this once a week. I'm going to get some friends on. I haven't exactly figured out what the format's going to be, but we're going to do some kind of a live stream once a week. That's the goal. Anyway, until next time, ladies and gentlemen, I'm going to end it there. Remember that it's not that our liberal friends are ignorant. It's just that they know so much. That is not so. Thank you very much, Michael, for joining the show and kind of walking us through what needs to be done with the FBI here. And it's nice to know that, look, everybody thinks the FBI is evil. There are some good FBI agents, especially former FBI agents that don't like
a lot of good
folks.
A lot of good folks. Yeah.
All right.
Good leadership.
We're going to end it here. We'll have you on again. I don't normally do interviews. You guys know that.
Yeah.
But if somebody knows their stuff, I do like to have a little bit of a chat with them. And I know Michael, he's a good man. So we're going to try to get him into office. And hopefully he can join Trump and clear out the FBI in a couple of years here. All right. We'll chat soon, my friend.
All right. Bye-bye.
Okay. Bye-bye. We'll end the broadcast there.